the Alan Watts way: how to trust your mind over the world. Why do we struggle so much with trusting ourselves? Why do we constantly look to the world, to rules, to structures, to other people for validation, guidance, or even permission to live the life we want? Alan Watts, the legendary philosopher, would argue that we've been taught to doubt ourselves from the very beginning. We've been conditioned to believe that the external world knows better, that society, authority, and tradition hold the answers. But here's the thing: what if the greatest truth you'll ever find is already within you? Let's start with something fundamental. Every single one of us has an inner voice. You know the one I'm talking about, that quiet sense of knowing, that gut feeling, that instinct that whispers to you when something feels right or wrong. And yet, how often do we ignore it? How often do we silence that voice because the world tells us something different? Imagine this: you're standing at a crossroads. One path is the one everyone else says you should take. It's safe, it's predictable, and it comes with the approval of others. The other path is the one your inner voice is pointing you toward. It's uncertain, maybe even a little scary, but it feels deeply, undeniably right. Which path do you choose? Most of us choose the first path because it feels safer. But Watts would challenge us to ask, what is this safety we're chasing? Is it real, or is it just an illusion? The world tells us that if we follow the rules, if we conform, if we do what's expected, we'll be secure. But Watts believed that this kind of security is a trap. Life is inherently uncertain, and no amount of external validation can protect us from that. Here's the profound truth Watts wants us to see: the world doesn't have your answers. You do. But trusting yourself, your mind, your intuition requires unlearning everything you've been taught about how life works. It requires stepping away from the noise of the world and tuning into the wisdom that's already within you. Let me ask you, how often do you doubt yourself? How often do you feel like the world knows better than you do? Maybe it's when you're making a big decision, or when you're trying to pursue something that doesn't fit into society's expectations. That doubt, that hesitation, it's a sign of how deeply we've internalized the idea that we're not enough.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Watts believed that when you trust your mind, you begin to flow with life instead of against it. You stop trying to control every outcome, and you start listening to the quiet wisdom within you. And the beautiful thing is, the more you trust yourself, the more the world begins to align with you. It's like tuning an instrument. When your inner world is in harmony, your outer world begins to reflect that. But trusting yourself isn't just about making big decisions. It's about how you live every moment of your life. It's about listening to your body when it tells you to rest, instead of pushing through exhaustion because the world glorifies productivity. It's about honoring your emotions, even the uncomfortable ones, instead of suppressing them because society tells you to stay positive. It's about following your curiosity, your passions, your joy, even when they don't seem practical or logical. But trusting yourself doesn't mean rejecting the world entirely. Watts believed in balance. He taught that while the world can offer wisdom, it should never drown out your own. Think of it like this: the world is a teacher, but you are the ultimate authority over your life. You can learn from others, but the final decision always belongs to you. So, let me ask you again, what would your life look like if you trusted your own mind more than the world's opinions? Maybe you'd stop chasing someone else's definition of success. But maybe you'd start living in a way that feels authentic to you, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. Watts would tell us that this is the essence of freedom: trusting yourself, even when the world doubts you. And the amazing thing is, the more you trust yourself, the more the world begins to make sense. You stop trying to control life and you start flowing with it. The noise of the world, how to silence it and hear yourself. Let's face it, the world is loud. Everywhere you turn, there's someone telling you how to live, what to think, and who to be. Social media screams at you to hustle harder, to look better, to achieve more. Advertisements constantly remind you that you're not enough unless you buy this, do that, or become something else entirely. Even people in your life, friends, family, co-workers, have their own opinions about what's best for you. And in all this noise, it becomes almost impossible to hear yourself. Your own voice, your own wisdom, is buried under the weight of external expectations. Alan Watts believed this is one of the greatest tragedies of modern life. We've forgotten how to listen to ourselves because we've been trained to listen to everyone else. But here's the thing, the world's noise will never stop. You can't mute it completely. So the question isn't, how do I make the world quiet? The question is, how do I make my own voice louder? Watts taught us that the first step is to recognize the noise for what it is, a distraction. He often compared the mind to a radio. Most of us are tuned into the wrong station, the station of fear, comparison, and constant striving. But we don't realize that we can change the channel. We can tune out the noise of the world and tune into ourselves. Let me ask you, when was the last time you sat in silence? Not scrolling on your phone, not distracted by TV or music, but truly alone with your thoughts. If that sounds uncomfortable, you're not alone. Most of us avoid silence because it forces us to confront ourselves. But Watts would argue that this discomfort is exactly where the magic happens. Silence is where your inner voice lives. It's the space where you can reconnect with your intuition, your desires, and your truth. But we've become so addicted to distraction that silence feels foreign to us. We fill every moment with noise because we're afraid of what we might find in the quiet. But here's the paradox: the more you avoid yourself, the more lost you become. The noise of the world gets louder, and your own voice fades into the background. The result: you live a life that isn't truly yours, a life dictated by external influences, not your own inner wisdom. Watts would challenge us to reclaim that wisdom. He believed that your mind is like a still lake. When the surface is disturbed by stress, fear, or the noise of the world, you can't see clearly. But when the water settles, when the noise quiets, the reflection becomes crystal clear. So how do you quiet the noise? It starts with mindfulness. Take a moment right now to pause. Breathe deeply. Feel your body. Notice your surroundings. This is the present moment, and it's the only place where your true self can be found. Watts often spoke about the power of meditation not as a rigid practice, but as a way to simply be. Meditation isn't about escaping the world. It's about coming home to yourself. It's about creating space for your mind to settle, for the noise to fade, and for your inner voice to emerge. But mindfulness isn't just about sitting in silence. It's about how you move through the world. Watts taught us to approach life with curiosity and presence. When you eat, truly taste your food. When you walk, feel the ground beneath your feet. When you speak, listen to the words as they leave your mouth. These small acts of awareness are how you begin to reclaim your connection to yourself. Here's a question to reflect on: whose voice is loudest in your life right now? Is it yours, or is it someone else's? Is it the voice of society telling you to keep climbing the ladder? Is it the voice of fear telling you to play it safe? Or is it your own voice guiding you toward what feels authentic and true? The more you practice silencing the noise, the more you'll begin to trust yourself. And the amazing thing is, when you trust yourself, the world's noise loses its power. You stop seeking validation from others because you've found it within. You stop chasing external achievements because you've realized that happiness isn't something you find out there, it's something you create inside. Watts would remind us that the world will always be loud, but your mind is your sanctuary. And when you learn to trust it, when you learn to listen to yourself above all else, you discover a freedom that no amount of external noise can take away. The power of trust, why your mind knows more than the world ever will. Alan Watts often said that the mind is a microcosm of the universe itself. That means everything you're searching for, the answers, the clarity, the guidance, it's already within you. But the problem is, we've forgotten how to trust ourselves. We've been conditioned to believe that the world knows better, that other people's opinions hold more weight than our own intuition. And that's why so many of us feel lost, disconnected, and unsure of who we really are. Let's consider this. Why do we trust the world more than we trust ourselves? Maybe it's because the world feels louder, more authoritative. It's constantly telling us what to do, what to value, and who to become. But Watts would argue that the world's authority is a mirage. The external world doesn't have access to your deepest truth, only you do. Think about how often you've ignored your gut feeling because someone else's voice seemed more convincing. Maybe it was a career path you knew wasn't right for you, but you followed it anyway because it was practical. Or maybe it was a relationship you stayed in because others said it looked perfect on the outside. And how did those decisions feel? Did they bring you peace, or did they leave you feeling even more disconnected from yourself? Here's the truth. Watts wanted us to realize your mind is not separate from the universe, it's a part of it. The same intelligence that moves the stars and grows the trees is the same intelligence that flows through you. When you trust your mind, you're not just trusting yourself, you're trusting life itself. But here's the challenge. Trusting yourself requires letting go of certainty. The world offers us rules, formulas, and guarantees, and we cling to them because they make us feel safe. But your mind doesn't work that way. Your intuition doesn't give you step-by-step instructions. It gives you a direction, a feeling, a pull toward what feels right. And following that requires courage. Let me ask you, when was the last time you trusted your intuition, even when it didn't make logical sense? Maybe it was a decision to take a risk, to walk away from something comfortable, or to pursue something that others didn't understand. And how did that decision feel? Even if it was scary, wasn't there a part of you that felt alive, like you were finally living in alignment with yourself? Watts believed that when you trust your mind, you begin to flow with life instead of against it. You stop trying to control every outcome, and you start listening to the quiet wisdom within you. And the beautiful thing is, the more you trust yourself, the more the world begins to align with you. It's like tuning an instrument. When your inner world is in harmony, your outer world begins to reflect that. But trusting yourself isn't just about making big decisions. It's about how you live every moment of your life. It's about listening to your body when it tells you to rest, instead of pushing through exhaustion because the world glorifies productivity. It's about honoring your emotions, even the uncomfortable ones, instead of suppressing them because society tells you to stay positive. It's about following your curiosity, your passions, your joy, even when they don't seem practical or logical. Watts often said, "You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself." That means your perspective, your experience, your mind. It's not a mistake or an accident. It's a vital part of the universe that is unfolding. And when you trust yourself, you're not just living your life, you're fulfilling your role in the grand dance of existence. But here's the deeper truth. Trusting yourself doesn't mean you'll never make mistakes. In fact, you will. But Watts would remind us that mistakes are part of the process. They're how we learn, grow, and refine our understanding of ourselves. The key is to trust that even your missteps are leading you somewhere meaningful. So, let me ask you again, what would your life look like if you trusted your mind more than the world? What decisions would you make if you stopped asking for permission? What paths would you explore if you stopped doubting your own wisdom? What would tell us that this is the ultimate freedom, the freedom to live authentically, guided not by the noise of the world, but by the quiet, steady voice within? And the amazing thing is, when you live this way, you don't just transform your own life, you inspire others to do the same. The Alan Watts secret freedom is trusting yourself completely. Here's the truth: Alan Watts wanted us to embrace freedom isn't out there, it's already within you. It's not something you achieve by controlling life or following the world's rules. It's something you unlock the moment you trust yourself completely. It's about realizing that your mind, your intuition, and your inner wisdom are not just enough, they're everything. But trust requires courage. It doesn't mean you'll always have the answers. It doesn't mean life will suddenly become predictable or easy. Trusting yourself is about stepping into the flow of life without knowing where it will carry you. It's about realizing that the journey itself is enough, that you as you are enough. Think about how much energy we waste doubting ourselves. How often do we second-guess our decisions, replay conversations in our heads, or worry about what others think? All of that doubt pulls us away from the present moment and makes us believe that the world knows better than we do. But Watts would remind us there is no external authority in your life. You are the only one living it. This doesn't mean rejecting the world entirely. It means learning to see the world for what it is: a guide, not a master. The world can offer you lessons, experiences, and challenges, but it can't tell you who you are. That's your job. And when you trust yourself, you stop living for the expectations of others and start living for the truth within you. Let me ask you one final question. What's one thing you would do differently if you fully trusted yourself? What's one decision you've been avoiding because you're afraid of what people will say, or because it doesn't fit into society's expectations? Imagine what your life would look like if you let go of that fear and followed your intuition instead. Watts believed that life isn't about certainty, it's about trust. Trusting that even when you don't know the path, your inner compass will guide you. Trusting that even when things fall apart, they're falling into place. Trusting that you don't need the world's approval because you already have your own. Because here's the truth: freedom isn't about controlling the world, it's about trusting yourself enough to let go. And when you do, you'll discover that the life you've always wanted is already within your grasp.